All right, good evening. Welcome. My name is Pat Kwitzel. I'm the buyer and author program coordinator at Magic City Books. I want to thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We are really excited to be continuing with our virtual author program series. We've started this back in the middle of April 2020, and we've completed more than 120 at this point. We're not done either, and I'm excited to say we have the rest of the spring. We have so many wonderful events. My colleague Jeff Martin often likes to talk about providing a mixed tape approach to our programming series, where we have some serious events, we have some fun events, we have fiction, nonfiction books for kind of all kinds of readers. And if this is the first time that you're joining us, we appreciate you being here. We do these just about every Monday and Thursday. We often sprinkle in Tuesday programs, Wednesday programs, even Sunday afternoon programs. And there's a full array of the ones that we've previously done recorded on our Magic City Books YouTube channel. And so we encourage you to go back and watch any of the previous ones and to share this one with your friends and family. Tonight, we are excited to welcome Melissa Bernstein. Melissa is a phenomenal mental health advocate, and she has just released her new book, LifeLines, an inspirational journey from profound darkness to radiant light. Melissa is the co-founder and chief executive officer of the wildly successful toy company, Melissa and Doug. But behind her story of success is the truth that Melissa has rarely divulged, and that is she has experienced anxiety and depression for most of her life and had thoughts of suicide. LifeLines is Melissa's opportunity to publicly share her truth and how she has found purpose, peace, and meaning. It is a profound book and an essential read as we emerge into whatever the new normal will be. I want to make sure everyone knows that they can participate in workshops, take the vital hike based on Melissa's inward journey, and become part of the LifeLines community at lifelines.com. And it is free. Also, they can contact Melissa anytime at melissabernstein@lifelines.com. We will be posting all of that in the chat, as well as links to purchase the book tonight. And so don't worry about having written that down right away. A couple of programming notes. That's what I just said. If you're joining us from outside of the area, we'd love for you to get a copy of this book and add it to your collection. We'll be posting links to purchase the book in the chat, and you can also go to magiccitybooks.com. Also, if you have questions for Melissa tonight, if you're joining us on Zoom, then please post it in the Q&A. If you're joining us from Facebook, just post it in the comments, and we will get to as many of those questions as time allows. Now, I'm thrilled that our moderator for tonight is Matthew Gleason from the statewide nonprofit advocacy agency, Mental Health Association Oklahoma. He is a former newspaper reporter who handles media relations for the association. He also produces and hosts the association's weekly podcast called The Mental Health Download. Matt and I interviewed Melissa on the latest episode of the Mental Health Download, and you can hear it wherever you listen to your podcasts. Mental Health Association is one of our great community partners for Magic City Books. It's also just an outstanding resource here in our community and across the state. We'll be posting links for Mental Health Association Oklahoma in the event chat as well, so that you can kind of check out some of their life-changing programs. Now, it is my honor to welcome Melissa Bernstein. Please give her a virtual hand wherever you may be watching.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Magic City Books.
And it's time for me to pass it off to Matt Gleason of the Mental Health Association Oklahoma to kick us off. Thank you all for being here and enjoy the program.
Awesome. Very good. If only we could just pipe in the amount of applause that if we were all in person, I would be standing, I wouldn't be in my bedroom. So
I need it. Come on, bring it on.
Well, I applaud you from my little bedroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So it's lovely to see you again, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us for this amazing event. And thank you, everybody who's with us tonight. This is really personally an honor because Melissa is the face of mental health advocacy in America right now. She is everywhere. Her media stories and this book, Lifelines, are, I kid you not, will change and save lives from suicide. So it is such an honor to get to talk to her again. We talked actually last week for the Mental Health Download podcast, which was such a thrill. So where we're going to start off is during that conversation we had for the podcast, Melissa, you told me that in the first week of this book's release, you got something like 10,000 fan letters. I can't imagine that. So, of all those, and I don't imagine that you maybe you did, you went through all of them, but was there one that stuck out in your mind, some message that really resonated with you and that really made all of the effort that you put into this book worth it?
To be honest, so many people said to me, you are the first person. I'm 70, 80, 90 years old, and I've never told anyone who I truly am and how I truly feel. I mean, one letter was more poignant than the next, and they were all sharing these secrets that they've been terrified to show to the world. So I think it manifested to me how much we hide the truth of who we are from the world, and how that is a direct channel to depression. You wonder why we have 300 million people throughout the world depressed. When I see the level of denial and repression of who we are, I can really understand why. Yeah. So I think that, and I think one of the other letters that meant so much to me was a woman who watched the CBS Sunday morning piece and said, when they started the piece, I went over to turn my TV off, because I said, oh, not another story about like the perfect American couple and this success story, the American dream, right. Because I'm a single mother on welfare in the Deep South. But I kept it on. And as I heard you speak, I looked in your eyes and I said, oh my goodness, Melissa isn't different than I am. And I always judged people like you, Melissa, because I thought those who have money and success and look a certain way can't be the same as I. But I will no longer judge people the same way, because I heard your pain, I looked in your eyes, and I now know that we are the same. And that letter was so emotional that I immediately wrote her back and was like, honey, we are exactly the same. And I'm so profoundly glad you can see that, because that's the whole reason I'm doing this. I want to show others that I am no different than anyone who's afflicted. And just because I've had some material success and some business success doesn't mean I don't suffer with some of the exact same conditions that many other people do as well.
Yeah. That's beautiful. All right. So one of the things that I think we all love about this book is that, you really take us on your path through depression, through your life, and it's filled with your beautiful writing, matched with gorgeous photography and your own verses that express your struggles and breakthroughs, and all the messages that mean so much to us. Every you turn a page and there's a new message that is fresh to inspire you. I mean, it's phenomenal. So, I just want you to kind of take us back and, share a little bit about your thought process and some of the inner journey that you took that allowed you to write this book, and why release it now. I think it's the perfect time to release it, but, explain just sort of that journey of how this book came about and why it's released right now.
Sure. I mean, honestly, it was only released now because it took me this long to actually admit who I was and accept who I was. Because, I was born with something that I couldn't even give voice to, which is called existential depression. And it was from the moment I took my first breath, I kind of knew something was wrong with me. Something was awry in my being. And I felt like I didn't belong here on earth, that I was truly from a different planet, because I had these questions of meaning that wouldn't leave me. Why am I here? What is the meaning of life if we are all ultimately just going to die? And what am I supposed to do during my brief time here to make my mark on the world? And those questions were so dire. And every single day, like this relentless drumbeat of these questions of why, that, I couldn't voice them. I certainly couldn't get answers to them. So I lived in this profound state of unsettledness, like not understanding why everyone else seemed to act like everything was just fine. And they were all carefree and smiling and flitting around like, that nothing was wrong, when like I couldn't rest easy. I was like in this state of complete and utter disarray. So because I couldn't deal with these feelings that basically told me, end it, that everything is futile, I did two things throughout my life. The first was, when I could, I retreated to my imagination, because that was for me utter bliss. Like, the white space of imagination is terrifying to some, not to me. To me, it is my playground, and it's the only place I have control. And I had two imaginary friends, and they became my like comrades and my best buddies. And, that was bliss. But when I had to live on Earth, back here, which was so despairing, I basically denied, repressed, and disassociated from everything I felt, and adopted a facade that was a pretend shell of perfection, and anchored to high achievement and validation through my academic and physical achievements.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. I want to remind everybody to please post your questions in the chat. I know you all have amazing questions, so can't wait to ask those to Melissa. In the meantime, I'd like for Melissa to tell us, about all of this amazing free resources available at lifelines.com, and this sort of origin of, a lot of people release books, but this really is a package deal. You get it's directed to lifelines.com, which is, as it's been described, is committed to helping others who are stuck develop a plan for themselves to survive and thrive. So, and I know that you and your husband have put millions of dollars into this project, and God bless you. So tell everybody why they need to go there and what is available there.
Sure. So Doug and I really decided and realized that we have a big issue in our country and in our world, which is so many people are despairing and don't know where to turn. So we decided that we wanted to spend the rest of our days, investing in mental health and helping others in three ways. Lifelines.com is an ecosystem for people who have always felt lost, that they don't belong, that no one understands them. And it's designed to, one, make them not feel alone. And that comes out of the fact that, I grew up, because of my stigmatizing thoughts and because of my stigmatizing personality that makes me able to sort of create out of nothing, I always felt rejected for who I truly was. And Lifelines is designed to welcome everybody, no matter who they are, with open arms. Two, through my experience being able to channel my deep, dark despair into light through creativity, I learned that we all have the capacity to channel our darkness into light. And even though some of us don't believe it and we feel stuck, we all are born with these beautiful seeds of expression in our soul. And we just need to somehow unearth them, kindle them, and allow them to rage freely. And some of us just are under so many layers that we don't think we can do that, but we can. And we're happy to shine the light and show others how they can begin to do that. And then three, when I finally got to the point, it took me till middle age when I was so exhausted, because pain plus resistance equals suffering. And I was in so much pain that I had repressed. I was resisting it, denying it, so repressing it even more. And it was festering. You can only resist and deny for so long. And it was leading to such suffering that one day I was truly like, I can't do this any longer. Like, I have to stop racing. I am utterly exhausted. So I decided on that day to stop racing outside myself for the answer and validation and material success. Take a breath, ask for help. It was the first time I admitted I am imperfect and I need professional help. And that was when I decided to make this inward journey and accept myself for the first time in totality. And that journey was so deep, dark, and ultimately profoundly revelatory that I wanted to create it for others. And that journey that I took, my very same journey, I recreated as the centerpiece of LifeLines, and is now a free journey that anyone can take that can allow them to start to uncover who they truly are.
Right on. Can you tell us about some of the LifeLines workshops and what all happens in those?
So one of the other, incredible things that we're doing, and it's maybe one of the most joyful acts of creation I've ever engaged in, is creating the content for workshops. Because what we want to do is we want to talk about the things no one ever talks about. And, the volumes in my book are those things that no one ever talks about. I wanted it to be like, this isn't a conventional book. I mean, that's why Doug and I published it ourselves, because it wasn't like, here's the how-to on how you achieve salvation. I just wanted to show these deep, dark feelings that no one talks about, martyrdom and perfectionism and powerlessness and loneliness and all the things that made up who I was, but I never showed the world. And those are the things we want to talk about. And we're having the best conversations. So basically what we're doing is I call them, and again, I want a better name for this, but basically we're myth busting. Yes. Because, I believe society sets us up for a horrible fall from the very outset. It gives us these unattainable ideals. And one of them, we had a workshop, I think it was last week. It was called The Pursuit of Happiness, the American Nightmare. Because, that's one of them, the pursuit of happiness. Like, right. That's what we're always in pursuit of, is happiness. But the truth is, life isn't, only happy. Happy is a very tiny piece of it. It's the full spectrum. And when we strive to attain these ideals, what happens is we always fall short. We always are left wanting more. And we're left feeling inadequate and unworthy in every single thing we do. Whether you're myself, who in theory has achieved the perfect American dream, or someone who's still striving, we both feel equally worthless, because society still tells me I haven't done it because I'm not happy all the time, because I don't have any balance in my life, because I haven't done I don't look the part. Everything I've been told I have to do and be and achieve is actually a lie. So we are talking about a lot of these things. Today, we had a great talk about martyrdom, which is when you believe you're giving selflessly, when in truth, actually, you do kind of expect to be sort of put up on a pedestal and anointed a savior for all your giving. And when you're not, you grow very bitter and resentful inside. And that's what happened to me. I thought I was a selfless giver and I was doing it all out of the goodness of my heart, when in reality, I actually was part of my validation need. I wanted to be validated for it. So, we're talking about a lot of really deep topics, and they're beautiful. Lots of tears, lots of people having revelations in them. And it's beautiful. It's just sharing things with people we don't even know that we've never shared before.
Right. If you had released this book pre-pandemic, and we all weren't so obviously accustomed to this virtual world where we feel comfortable, crying and sharing our emotions in this virtual world. But if you would release this book and you released lifelines.com prior to the pandemic, how would that be different? How would those, your workshops be different? How, basically, what is the silver lining of the pandemic that has allowed us to embrace these lifelines.com conversations?
It's pretty incredible. And it wasn't intentional at all. I mean, we're planning on releasing it now, no matter what. But, what I've suffered from, this existential depression, I was born with. But what COVID has done for so many is it's given them a crisis of existential depression. And because it's made us really question life and its meaning. So it's incredible to me that something that would have been so difficult, I think, for so many to understand without COVID, now I get thousands of letters of people saying, I am undergoing an existential crisis right now. Because basically what it did, right? In an instant, everything we clung to, all our material success, all our roles, all our activities, just shattered in front of us and left us all questioning like what life's meaning really is. So I think it's such a blessing because, how I learned to navigate my own existential despair is what I can use to help those, whether you're born with it or whether you have it now, the answers are really the same.
Yeah. What do you hope in the, and I know we have a long way to go, but as COVID, as more people are becoming vaccinated, as there is that light at the end of the tunnel, what are you hoping for LifeLines after the pandemic? What do you hope, what opportunities are out there that you're hoping to take advantage of once we can be in person together?
Yeah, I think another blessing of COVID is I really hope that many use it as a wake-up call, because I've spoken with so many who are in situational despair because their connection, their roles have changed. Let's say they're a teacher and they used to go into the classroom where they found that sense of meaning and meaning and control and connection have disappeared now that it's virtual, and they're in despair. And they say to me, I'm in despair now, but I'll be back soon and things will go back to normal. And what I want to say to the world is someday you won't be teaching anymore. And this should be a warning. I feel like it's almost like a heart attack to all of us, that heart attack that just tells you need to change your diet a little bit and exercise more. I feel like this is our opportunity to develop our practice. And for me, the way I am here today and able to be my best every day is, I live with a mental affliction. I mean, I was born with existential despair and I will die with it. It is part of who I am. And the only way I can, be my most effective each day is to develop, I call it my toolbox, and I always hold it because it's my metaphorical toolbox of lifelines to help me survive with this condition. And I feel like COVID has shown us that we all must develop our toolbox of lifelines, because at any moment, the next pandemic can hit. And we want to have that sense of wholeness within that enables us to withstand any metaphorical pandemic, whether it's, losing a loved one, whether it's an illness yourself, whether it's losing a job, anything can throw you into despair, and you need that toolbox to remain steadfast in the face of it.
Nice. So I would love for you to, show us some of the pieces in your toolbox, that, when I'm sure people come up to you and they all the time, and they're in letters or in the virtual world, they come up to you.
Yeah.
But, give us like one of those, like, get in your toolbox and be like, this piece, this really helps me. What's in there?
I'd love that. So my Lifelines toolbox has 3 sections, because they're all really important to me and things I would not do unless I made it a practice. So I have to do this every single day, and especially in the good times, because when we're feeling good, above the line, so to speak, that's when we're like, we don't need to do this. This is a pain. It's a practice. Like, I don't want to do it. That's when you have to do it, because you're trying to create muscle memory for when you go below the line. And then you need it to be right there, or you'll fall. For me, I'm speaking about myself, I'll fall way below and I might not come back up. So it involves self-care is one piece, tools and skills are the second, and passions and play are the third. So gosh, in self-care, it's really simple things for many people, but not for me. Like one of them is adequate sleep, because I don't like to sleep. And being a creative and going through a lot of manic phases, There are times when I could easily not sleep for 3 days and create through the night. And that's when I'm putting out output, so to speak, it's like, I don't want to go to bed. I mean, I am not allowing myself creativity that could be on a piece of paper. And now I know if I don't sleep for 3 days, like I'm going to get sick or I'm going to fall into despair. I have to force myself to sleep at least like 6.5 hours every night. That's hard for me, but it's part of my practice. I have to do it. Eating good meals each day, having been someone who was afflicted with a lot of disordered eating, I have to make sure I eat to be whole. So that's the practice types of things, all those self-care. The tools and the skills are things like a lot of my mental practice. So it's mantras. It's a lot of my verses that I say to myself, like step on out of the head, moving into the heart, free to channel all dread into jubilant art. My mantras about what I should do. My practice of allowing all my emotions. Sometimes when I feel a negative emotion, let's say I have a twinge of jealousy towards someone, which all of us have, even I will immediately go into, Melissa, what are you doing? You shouldn't be jealous of that person. You have everything. The berating myself for feeling that way. Sure. Then I have to go into my practice. Melissa, allow your feelings, go back to the wounded inner child, give her compassion. And I have to engage in these practices. And mindfulness is another one of my tools, like being present in everything I do. When I'm brushing my teeth, not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, actually feeling the toothbrush on my teeth. So that's the tools and skills. And then the most fun is the passions and the play. Those are all the things that I want to do and I love doing, which include, of course, writing my verses and engaging in any form of creativity, being in nature, which is like my lifeline. And I take walks with Doug every single day. Drinking tea, one of my true passions that is simple, but I love. Playing with my pets. I mean, it goes on and on, listening to music. And those, we have to get out of our heads and into our hearts as much as we can. And playing and having passions and engaging in them really puts us in our hearts where we can be living in the moment and time stops and we feel true joy.
That is a wonderful toolbox that should be sold at Home Depot. All right. So we have some lovely audience questions we're going to get to now. So this is from Becky, and she says, it is terribly difficult to find a counselor that is a good fit. Any tips? It is always so expensive. She says, love is such a foreign word to me. How can I get it, feel it, and understand it? So we'll take that first. What do you recommend for finding a counselor, or because they are so expensive, and how maybe LifeLines can maybe fill the gap?
I know. I mean, we're just peer to peer, but we have a lot of folks who cannot afford a counselor who are getting a lot of solace in our community. And I think sometimes, we're not professionals, but sometimes just knowing that everyone there has gone through, similar experiences can help. It's not the answer, but it can help. And the journey is the journey I took with my therapist. So it is, and she helped me write it. So it is a therapeutic journey. The only thing is, you can be triggered at some points. And we say, like, if you get to a point and you're feeling like I can't do this alone, then you have to stop and get the help of a therapist. So that journey is free. And it's a journey that cost me a lot of money because I took it with a therapist. So you're getting it free. And I would say the only way it's like finding a life partner. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. So the likelihood of finding like the perfect match on the first try, it isn't high. So unfortunately, it's trying a lot of people because it has to be someone you really trust. And I know my therapist, like, I couldn't have found a better one for me. And if I hadn't found someone like that, I never would have been able to take my journey.
Yeah. Becky, I will tell you that if you are in Oklahoma or actually anywhere in America, we get calls from all over the place, but Mental Health Association Oklahoma, we have a mental health professional who is in charge of our free mental health assistance center. And her name's Lucinda. She's a lovely soul. And she is there to help navigate people who, just like you, who, there's so many barriers to mental health treatment, including cost. And so if you go to mhaok.org, that is Mental Health Association's website, you can find information about how to contact us. The assistance line number is 918-585-1213. You can call that Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and Lucinda will be there to help you. And we also know how to connect you to pro bono counseling in your community throughout the state. So
did she also ask a question about love?
She did, and I'm going to ask that again. Yeah, she said, love is such a foreign word to me. How can I get it, feel it, and understand it?
Ooh, so yeah, I was right there. I was right there. And you can't get it, feel it, and understand it until you have it for yourself. And that's what I really learned. We can't give it, get it, receive it really honestly until we make that journey inward and accept ourselves in totality. Because most of us, in truth, if we admit it, we despise ourselves. We've never accepted ourselves. And the number one negative cognition is, I am unworthy. I am worthless. And we all feel that, shockingly and sadly. Most of us feel very unworthy. And I think part of the journey is going back to those childhood traumas that triggered that sense of unworthiness, unearthing them, understanding them now as an adult rationally, that they led to some misconceptions that our head told us that aren't true. And once you reprocess them and realize, oh my gosh, I'm not unworthy at all, my head was just telling me that, you can drop them and begin to give yourself the love that you're seeking. So for me, it took a lot of work and a lot of going back to the past traumas. It didn't happen. I still do it every single day. There's some triggers where I start to go back and act like that little child again. And I have to go back and understand why I'm acting that way. And I call it a butterfly hug. And so do a lot of people. You have to give yourself that butterfly hug for feeling the way you feel and accepting that it's okay to feel those things.
Yeah.
So it won't happen right away, but as you begin to accept yourself and allow your feelings and feel compassion for yourself, for being exactly who you are, for being human, for being imperfect, for being weak, for being strong, for being it all, you'll begin to see love all around you.
Yeah. You talk about childhood trauma, and myself included, I experienced bullying, and still dealing with that. I'm 41, and they still pop up with my nightmares and things like that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about any experiences of your childhood trauma, maybe bullying, maybe anything that you can share?
Yeah, I think one of mine that was the hardest to break was this feeling that everyone had things I didn't have. I think I felt so bereft in my soul because I never felt accepted and loved for who I was, that I felt like anything anyone had that I didn't was unfair. And it led to this deep competition with everyone in my life. No matter what anyone had, whether I really wanted it or not, I felt tremendous jealousy for them, always. And I think, and always like, I don't get it. Why do they have that and I don't? And setting up this competition in my head that it continued to this day. And it wasn't until I did the work, and the work took going back and back to that inner child when that feeling first hit, that first time that I went back to the unworthiness I felt and gave myself compassion for feeling so unworthy. And it wasn't until I accepted it that I was able to, and give myself love for it, that I was able to not feel jealous toward everyone in my life.
Yeah, nice. How did your parents help you in that journey? Dealing with that childhood traumas and everything that you went through. Were your parents very supportive? Were they, how did they help you, or what role did they play?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, they were going through their own traumas and had experienced their own traumas. And I think were so locked in their own traumas that they were unable to see mine and support that. So, I think when you realize that you only bring to the party your own experience. And, unfortunately, their experiences were really bad in their own lives. And they came to the parenting, equation kind of like not having done their work. So they couldn't support me in how I felt. And I think they weren't aware at all of how I felt. And I hid it from the world because I didn't want anyone to see it. So we were all in tremendous denial. And I think when I, shared with them even what I went through, they were shocked because they had no idea.
Yeah. And I love we talked about this on the podcast, but you have to help yourself in order to help others. And that I feel that as a parent, I have to take care of my own mental health and be in a good place so I can, offer that same help to my children and be supportive and have those open conversations, including suicide, which is really a difficult conversation. I have 3 daughters, and to, talk to them openly, and they're, and they're very young and their early teens, and to talk about suicide is really, really, really difficult. And so I want to talk to you about, because you're in this book, you talk about, and in that wonderful CBS interview, you talk about that you in college, you had that bottle of pills, you researched and found the exact cocktail that would effectively stop your heart. And, you carried those around, you'd look at them, you'd put one in your mouth even and put it back. And it was just, you had to make that decision in that moment to not die by suicide. And for you to share that is so, I think it's wonderful, because when someone can share that, then like we've talked about, people don't feel so alone, because you are not alone and they are not alone in those experiences. And that help is available. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, put that out there. Please call that. It's 1-800-273-TALK. But I want you to talk to us about why you are so passionate about suicide prevention, and maybe how LifeLines can help in saving lives from suicide.
Yeah, I think, I used philosophy as my pathway out. And, many say that philosophy is the way you extricate yourself from the prison of your mind, because it really shows you, at least for me, it showed me the pathway out. And I think I was a huge fan of Albert Camus, who basically said that he believed suicide was the coward's way out. And I get it. I know when obviously you're at that point, and I was there, right? The pain is so great. It's like what do they say? It's the worst of 2 really bad decisions or choices that you have to make. But I did, even in that moment that I was like, the pill was on my tongue, I knew that it was the least courageous move to make. And I knew that courage would involve forging ahead and finding light in the darkness. And I think, I always had that tiny ray of hope. And it really was my intellectual overexcitability that in the end saved me, because it was the curiosity. I always had a curiosity, and that's where my creativity is spawned from too. This curiosity, the why, right? So it was, why was the first question I ever asked, and why is the reason I create, and why led me out of the despair, because I still wanted to know why, what was the meaning. And I knew if I ended my life, I would never get the answer to my why. So those philosophers who suffered with existential despair just as deeply as I, every one of them, well, I think every one of them created a reason to live and created philosophies that gave them the reason to live and created the antidote to futility through existentialism, which basically says that even though the world and life itself may be meaningless in the end, we still have an obligation through awareness, free will, and personal responsibility to commit ourselves to making meaning for ourselves, transcending our burdened heads, and engaging in the flow of life.
That's beautiful. Wow. I am curious about, I think a lot of people, I'm in Oklahoma, the belt of the Bible Belt,
Yes.
the buckle of the Bible Belt. And so I think a lot of people will be asking about spirituality and, how that plays in LifeLines and, your own spirituality. So, talk about faith and mental health and where
I've gotten that question a lot, and I've gotten people that say the real answer, lies in religion and God, and I love that. I write them back and I say, I'm so glad you found your faith and your light, and that's amazing. Like, I have no judgment, and I think for me, I believe in God. I believe God is in everything and everyone, and I'm really spiritual. But I didn't use that as my pathway out, because for me, anything outside myself left me powerless to really control my own life and my own fate. And for me, I needed that control. I needed to know that I alone could wrest meaning out of meaninglessness. So for me, it was concrete actions that took me out of my despair. And even though I look up to the heavens and I'll say, please, that's just a little bit of assistance. Like, I'm not just depending on that, because I feel like people, philosophers that I believe, and I've adopted their philosophies, they all believe in personal responsibility. And that's where I was as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And towards the end of our podcast, the interview that we did the other day, we were talking about how excited we were to do this conversation today. And you said, Matt, come with hard questions. And I have more questions, but I know that you asked the hardest questions of yourself, and you probably heard some, just like these spirituality questions, these really hard questions. So I'm going to ask you, what is either the hardest question that you've been asked since this book came out, or what is the hardest question you would ask yourself?
Wow.
Turned it around on you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, what is the answer? I think that has been a good question that I've been asked. People have asked about my kids and how this has impacted them, which is a really hard question. I think those are all pretty deep questions that have been recent ones.
Well, let's do it then. All right. So what is the answer? Please give us the answer.
I mean, the answer, this is not what people are going to want to hear. The answer is different for every one of us. But the answer for me was basically that there is no answer, and we must individually make meaning for ourselves by engaging in something that connects us with the flow of life. So for me, I realized that the very thing that I tried to deny, repress, and destroy my whole life, which was the qualities in myself that gave me the ability to create, were indeed my salvation. And for me, meaning is taking all that darkness and all that dread and all that despair, and every moment of every day I can, channeling it into creativity that has the ability to impact others. And I think that's all I can do. And that's the closest I can get to finding my own meaning.
I love that. Well, you shared that, and so I'll share something. And I really appreciate your take on mindfulness, and I love meditation. It has been my saving grace. I did a course with a meditation teacher who's actually a nun who worked for Desmond Tutu. She's in Tulsa.
Wow.
She's amazing, and she on occasion will cuss, and which brightens my soul. And she's just lovely. But at the beginning of this training, she told the class, she says, "Look, get through this with me, and then at the end I'm going to share the key to the answer to life." So I was like, oh, I guess I got to keep coming to class. So at the end, Sister Ellie, she says, "Okay, I'm serious. I'm going to tell you the answer to life." And everybody kind of got a little, and she says, "It's compassion." There you go. That's the answer. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others. The end. And I think that's
so there are a bunch of circles in the sort of positive disintegration, and the middle one is compassionate awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to throw that other question back at you. And how's this book positively helped your children? And if you want to touch on having the spotlight on their mother's mental health, if the stigma of mental health, I know, is mental illness is very, very, very strong.
It is.
And so I want you to kind of talk the positive and negative.
Sure. And I will say, despite the fact that people say, oh, the stigma is loosening, I don't think it is. I mean, people say they have it, but the stigma is still so great. And I see it every single day, even for I was interviewed for the high school newspaper where two of my kids go to school. So that's a whole other story. And at the end of the interview, the girl said, I really whispered, I suffer from anxiety. And that's today, recently. And she was really ashamed to say it to me. Right. And I said, you shouldn't be ashamed. Probably 90% of your peers have the exact same thing, but they're terrified to admit it. And that's really, I think that's the most tragic part of all this, is we're all suffering from the exact same thing, yet nobody is talking about it. So anyway, we're going to stop that. But I would say,
I like that.
No more of that. I'd say it, like everything, it's had its positives and it's also had its negatives. Its positives are that I am now a full spectrum of emotion. And I was the mother that really fulfilled everybody's physical needs perfectly. There wasn't anything they could ever want for, but I really was somewhat emotionless, because I didn't know how to feel. I had one emotion my whole life, which was just great. And I really denied everything I felt. And served from an empty well, my whole life. So I think they didn't necessarily see a mother that had the full spectrum of emotion. And in a way that was good, because I served continually, but in a way it wasn't, because, I didn't show it, and I really didn't teach them how to feel, because I wasn't an example of what it meant to feel and show how you're feeling. So I think in one sense it's positive, because they are now getting to see that I am a real person, that there's a reason that I was so robotic and emotionless, and they can get to know me more as a real person. But then the flip side is getting to know me more as a real person means I'm also more honest. I also say how I'm feeling. I also show when I'm unhappy. Right. And I never did that. I hid everything. I would just be like, great. Now I'll look like, and they'll be like, what? It's well, I'm showing you how I feel. So I think there's a double-edged sword to showing how you're feeling, because I might be showing that I'm not happy with something, which isn't a great thing either.
Yeah. All right. We have 9 minutes. I really want to hear, you're brilliant. And I asked you before this interview, I said, hey, I may have you read something from your book. And you're like, oh no, don't worry, it's all in my brain. So I just want you to speak us some verse, and
Sure.
maybe pick one and then tell us the story behind it, and that'll be kind of a nice way to sort of land this plane.
That's great. Yeah, I think, when I think about my life, basically I spent my whole life, the metaphor is I was in a car and I wasn't driving the car. I was in the back seat. So this verse kind of explains that whole, and I have a couple, but this one I really love. And I wrote it very recently. I don't think it's even in my book, actually. I spent 5 long decades quaking in the back seat of my car, incapacitated passenger, observing from afar, while the landscape raced on by and I watched utterly agape, knowing life would never change until I opted to escape from the back seat to the driver's seat and grab the steering wheel, now absolved to choose my course and voice exactly how I feel. So that really explains sort of how I was letting life control me and a victim of everything that, the world bestowed on me, until I decided to take control of my life. And that's when everything changed. That's when I realized that actually I did have the ability, through my actions, through my behavior, and through my attitude, to change each day.
Nice.
And I can do one more too, if you want.
Please.
This one is in the liberation section. It's in the last section of my book, where I finally realized that I do, again, have control, and can take ownership for my life and making it everything I want it to be. And before that, life was very, I would say, very black and white. So this explains that. I was solely outcome driven, with results deemed black or white, some days wallowing in anguish, others basking in delight. Yet a hostage to perfection left me serving time in jail, with no courage to take risks or the capacity to fail, till at last I welcomed grays to flow amid the other two, for there's nothing more profound than living life in every hue. So that was about, again, very distinct black or white buckets, when life is really about the grays. It's about that full spectrum of emotion, one side, the other, and then everything in between as well.
I could not have, oh my goodness, that is such a wonderful way to end our conversation. I know that there's a slide that my good friend Pat Kowitzel is going to share that we're going to talk about. Pat, you want to throw up the slide, buddy? He's like trying to get the slide going.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, our ecosystem, lifelines.com, is entirely free. And we have workshops every single day. And it's really great. We're doing some smaller workshops now. We have some larger ones that have a few hundred people sometimes. So we have the full gamut, and they're really powerful. And I think we've had some good revelations. So yeah, so this is our ecosystem is lifelines.com. And if anyone would like to contact me personally, I do respond to all my emails personally. It's Melissa Bernstein at lifelines.com. And we really appreciate you being here tonight and joining us. And we hope you'll join us on this journey inward to self-acceptance.
Love it. All right. Well, like we began, I wish I had all the applause that I could share, but
thank you,
this
Matt.
one clap represents all of ours.
Clapping for you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and all the good you do to help people who are afflicted. We need more people like you, because this is not gonna, it's not one person that's gonna fix this. This is like a whole bunch of us that join arms together.
Well, and you are at the front. I appreciate you so much. Again, everyone, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Please go and get your copy of LifeLines, either in person at Magic City Books or online at magiccitybooks.com. Get this book. It will, I kid you not, it will inspire you. It will change your life, and it could save a life. And so please buy one for yourself, buy one for a friend, and share this powerful message. So with that, I'm going to say thank you and good night. And thank you, Melissa. You are my hero. All right.
Thank you, Magic City Books. Support your local independent bookstore.
So good. All right, everyone, be safe. Thank you.